The cause for that disturbance was what I call a digital atomic bomb. And the effect is what I call Money 2.0. Good morning once again. My name is Nzwisisa Chidembo, but please call me Nzwi. That's what everybody calls me. And I'm here today as a guest speaker, having been invited by Libertas. So thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to the event organizers for today for making this possible. It's always great to have an opportunity to share more so about what we are seeing in our different ecosystems, but most importantly, share notes on what our world might look like in the near future. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a venture builder. As mentioned, my role is to work with some of the most ambitious founders on the continent to assist them in leveraging technology to build and scale their businesses. I've been able to work with 40 plus businesses across the continent, across fintech, agri-tech, and health tech. I'm also a bass fisherman and enjoy waking up in the morning for the early catch. So if you do see me at some of the popular fishing spots around the country, please do come and say hi. But most importantly, I'm a blockchain enthusiast. I've not always been a blockchain enthusiast. I was firstly a mobile payments researcher, and through my quest to discover efficient payment rails for the continent, I came across digital currencies. And for the last couple of years, I've been on this journey advocating for this incredible technology that can really bring about amazing efficiencies within our payment systems. So now that's out of the way, I want to talk about this interesting phenomenon that we've been witnessing, and it has touched most probably all of us here, and that's the gig economy. And I want to start off by sharing a story. About 2 months ago, a friend and a former colleague reached out to me asking to have a discussion. And this colleague of mine is a technologist known the world over. And he had received an offer to work with an entity or a business in Canada. And his ask was basically, how can I leverage digital currencies to firstly access my earnings instantly, but secondly, be able to preserve my earnings leveraging digital currency? For the purposes of preserving his earnings, he was more so interested in what are called stable coins. And for those who might not know, stable coins are a relatively stable digital currency that is pegged mostly towards a fiat currency. So you'll find it being pegged, for instance, 1:1 to the US dollar. And so we went about workshopping and discussing how he could leverage. And I was sharing some of the interesting facts that I've come across within this area. But what was really interesting to me was that this was not the first conversation that I've had. Over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity of having conversations with hundreds of engineers across the continent. And I've watched in awe and admiration at the developer community in West Africa, specifically Nigeria, at how they have honed their skills to such an extent that there is strong international interest in them being participants within the global economy. And so through these conversations, I've been hearing this pain point over and over again. Engineers seeking to access their earnings instantly, but also seeking to preserve their earnings. So let's look at the definition of the gig economy. What is the gig economy? So this is a definition from the Oxford Dictionary, And it really focuses on specific aspects. It's a labor market. It's short-term in nature in terms of the participants who are participating in this economy, but also freelance work is quite prevalent. But what is missing from this definition is the aspect that many of the platforms that are promoting the gig economy and many of the communities that are supporting the gig economy have an international or a global nuance. And because of this, they are seeking out efficient payment rails for them to be able to participate within this interesting new economy that is developing. So why is it important for Africa? Why, for instance, is the gig economy important for Africa? If one takes a look at some of the population statistics that we have, we witness that Africa as a continent by 2025 will overtake China in terms of population numbers. By 2030, we're looking to overtake East Asia. But what's really interesting is that by 2100, we are going to be 40% of the entire world from a population perspective. And what is critical for one to note is that the population growth on the continent is being powered by the youth. And the youth is keen to be part of the gig economy. They are keen to engage with the global ecosystem. So it's quite likely that the pressure and the demand to have efficient payment methods is going to grow as time passes by. I want to just bring this interesting illustration to your attention. So a couple of years ago, I came across this interesting image, and this is the Senegambia Bridge. The name itself is a combination of Senegal and Gambia, simply because those two countries came together to actually build this interesting bridge. So what would take place before the bridge is that merchants used to leverage just one ferry to be able to go over the Gambia River. And the challenge that used to happen is that this ferry would break down for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, and merchants just had to simply wait. So you can imagine the impact that it would have on both the population in Gambia as well as the population in Senegal when this ferry would actually stop functioning. So it is that the two countries came together and decided to basically build this important piece of infrastructure. However, when I came across this image a couple of years back, what really stood out for me was the fact that even though there was now an efficient method to get across the Gambia River, one can still see the ferry in operation. This gives just an indication of how our processes sometimes work in this world, in that, yes, new methods can be introduced that are quite efficient, but our systems tend to take time to catch up with reality. Similar to the story that I shared right at the beginning, whereby Shapiro, the physicist, saw the flash in the sky from the first atomic bomb, but it took a while for the blast wave to get to him. So this is something that we are witnessing, in that we are seeing strong interest to leverage efficient payment methods such as digital currencies, but it is taking time for everything to line up. But that doesn't deny the fact that indeed new technology that is leapfrogging the previous ways of doing things currently exist. So let's take a look at some of the key drivers for digital currencies and some of these efficient payment rails. Why is it that participants within the gig economy are pushing for this? One of the key reasons, of course, I've already mentioned this, is just having access, being able to engage with the global economy. It's important to note that traditional mobile payment providers have gone a long way in bringing about access for the unbanked and underbanked. And what we're starting to see is strong synergy between mobile payment providers and digital currencies in order to further enhance accessibility for populations. Another key driver that we're witnessing is, of course, the need for instant remittance flows. And why it is that there's such increased efficiency gain from this perspective is simply because most digital currencies currently are circumventing existing regulatory frameworks. And there are two ways that governments and regulators are dealing with this. They either say, no, we're not going to allow this type of currency to function within our ecosystem, or some of them are basically saying, okay, let it develop and we'll build regulation as it develops. A similar approach that we saw with mobile payments across the world. Another key driver for digital currencies is the ability to lower transaction costs. This is simply because intermediaries are taken out of the equation at a great deal. We're going to speak more to intermediaries and how they work within the system. So, in a nutshell, central banks are feeling the technological pressure that these new payment rails are providing. And so we are seeing them trying to catch up and release what are called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs in short, that leverage the same technology that digital currencies are using in the form of decentralized ledgers. And if we look at the definition of a central bank digital currency, just some of the key aspects include, of course, the fact that it's in digital form, but the issuer is the central bank. But also we see a differentiation of balances between traditional fiat currencies and this new form of currency. This definition comes from the Financial Action Task Force, and this is a global body from a policy perspective that furnishes guidelines to different regulators across the world on how they should basically interact and engage with digital currencies. So I would definitely recommend everyone to always have an eye out on what they're saying, what they're discussing, because they are indeed shaping our future world. So central bank digital currencies come in two flavors. We've got wholesale as well as retail. Wholesale being CBDs that basically allow financial institutions to interact between themselves, whereas retail brings the entire economy into play, including the citizens, merchants, and financial institutions. So let's zone in on retail central bank digital currencies. I just want to touch on some of the critical elements that make them work from a high-level perspective. The first aspect is that for one to have a retail central bank digital currency, they need to be able to actually mint the digital currency. So think about it as being able to just print a fiat money, right? And what we are witnessing is that central banks across the world are teaming up with technological partners because of the technological burden and hurdle that is involved with creating the payment rails within this aspect. So with that team up, central banks are then able to start the process of actually minting digital currency. Another important aspect when it comes to retail central bank digital currencies is the aspect of distribution. And because of the nature of the beast and the nature of the technology, the distribution is all online and automated. But where are the digital currencies actually going to? So we find merchants coming into play. And what is really interesting is that with the approaches that we are currently seeing, technological partners that are working with central banks are trying by all means to make sure that merchants still use the same technology that they've been using so far in order to make the transition as easy as possible. But distribution of the digital currency also goes to the citizens. And what we are seeing is that central banks are releasing mobile apps, which are basically mobile wallets that allow for the citizen to be able to send and receive central bank digital currencies. What's really interesting, however, is that central banks are leveraging the existing regulatory frameworks such as the requirement to have KYC in order to onboard the citizen, bringing about this question around accessibility. If indeed central bank digital currencies will be able to extend themselves and introduce those who have been traditionally left out of the traditional system. So the question is, why now? Why are central banks looking at this technology? We have already spoken about, the technological pressure that central banks are facing. But there's this important aspect of, the ability for them to leverage this technology to improve transparency of money flows. One of the key challenges with fiat currency is that there are players who tend to hoard cash, thereby negatively impacting the community or the economy itself. So this is something that will allow central banks and governments to be able to basically deal with and detect easily. Another key driver for governments to explore central bank digital currencies is the aspect of bringing about efficient tax collection mechanisms. As most of you might know, here in South Africa, we've got quite an advanced tax collection system compared to everywhere else on the continent. And as we move northwards, tax collection becomes quite a challenge. And leveraging central bank digital currencies, tax collection, it can simply be an automated program that runs automatically without intervention. So there's a lot to be gained for governments to leverage central bank digital currencies. Another interesting aspect that is providing this driver for governments and central banks is the ability for them to be able to intervene from a social perspective within different populations. This allows, for instance, governments to be able to deposit digital currency directly into the citizen's wallet. Why is this important? Because current mechanisms that are being leveraged tend to have parties that have different or differing agendas. And so you will find a government with one view of intervening in a specific social crisis, but players or intermediaries might have another agenda when it comes to distribution of those funds. This brings us to Libertas and some of the work that they've been doing. So Libertas have been able to basically launch two stable coins. The first one is SZAR, which is pegged to the South African rand. The second one is Binar, which is pegged to the Serbian dinar. One might be asking themselves, okay, what does stable coins and central bank digital currencies, how do those two relate to one another? But the same underlying technology that is used to basically put together a stable coin is the same technology that is used for central bank digital currencies. So I encourage you to have a chat with the Libertas team and hear about some of their exploits within this area and learn more about this area. So then the question is, what's next for central bank digital currencies? We are definitely going to be seeing more pilots in the near future. As we might know, 85% of central banks across the world are looking at central bank digital currencies, with Nigeria having launched the e-Naira on the continent. We are also going to start seeing integration of international money transfer operators into central bank digital currency technology, thereby increasing the scope of this new type of money. We are also going to be seeing more regulation within this space as governments and regulators seek to rein in this interesting phenomenon that we're seeing across the world. But most importantly, we are also going to start seeing standards being developed as this world starts developing further. So what is clear is that in 2009, our world changed. It might not have been that evident to everyone, but the impact of what happened on that day when the team launched this digital atomic bomb is being felt. And with every cycle, the impact and the influence is growing. And with all signals that we are seeing right now, it's highly likely that central bank digital currencies are going to play a pivotal role in our finances and in our financial systems in the near future. So I hope that my talk today was sort of a foundation for you to be able to start researching and learning more about this interesting technology, and that you can start basically forming your own hypothesis of how the future might look like within our world. Thank you very much.